Right everyone, welcome. It's Ryan here from the London Craftsman channel. How are you? Today is a tour of my workshop. It's obviously 2023. I did a tour of 2022. Not much has changed between 2022 and 2023, but today is basically showing you my entire space, how I work, the two areas, the workshop space and the spray room space, and why I've designed everything the way I have. As you can see in front of you, we've got the ultimate workbench, a dedicated space for all our making. We've got tons of space. We've got not many machines lying around. It's all about space in here. And over there, we've got the spray room, which is dedicated to doing all our finishing. So if you're interested in seeing our entire space, how we've designed it and why we have, that floats your boat, better stay tuned, watch to the end, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so let's talk about the two main spaces. So on the right hand side is the workshop side. This is the original workshop that was built 8 years ago. And as you can see, when we built the spray room side, we extended it ever so slightly. So we've got 9 meters by roughly 4.5 meters, and we made it 2.5 meters tall so we could stand materials up on edge with no problems whatsoever. And on this side, we've got the spray booth side. So this is 8 meters long. It's 5 meters wide, and again, it's 2.5 meters tall. And we divided the space up using sliding doors, 4 big panels. We haven't cut these doors down. They're 1.2 wide, and it works absolutely perfectly. And they used to slide behind this racking here, and they still do, to be honest. They go all the way back to that point there. So they can go back, but there's no point anymore because we've got racks here. They only need to go back to this point, and that is the full opening that we get at the moment. But these work perfectly to keep the dust out of the spray room side, and also to keep the noise from one side to the other out and give a bit more soundproofing, I guess. So what we'll do is we'll move over into the spray room side and talk about the spray room side first. So the main thing is, you could probably tell it's nice and bright. And we built it with skylights in mind. So we've got one skylight above the spray booth, and that is essential really, because you want to see nice natural light over where you're spraying. So light is essential for spraying, isn't it? So when you're spraying, you need natural daylight if possible, and that is why I positioned the skylight above. It's getting a little bit dark outside now. So the spray booth consists of just a few elements. You've obviously got the fans themselves. And for these fans, we've used 450mm flat fans. So this wall is a stud wall, and they go directly outside. We've got 2, one either side. And my thought behind that was that when you're spraying, the overspray just falls down, doesn't it? It doesn't hover around, especially with an airless sprayer. So when you're spraying with airless, the overspray is a lot heavier than if you're spraying with HVLP or a compressor sprayer. Because with those sprayers, they just create so much overspray. Airless is different. We're spraying household paints, which are a lot heavier. We're not thinning them down. We're not watering them down at all. They come straight out of the pot, spraying them out exactly how they are in the tin. So the spray just falls down to the ground, and that is my thinking behind it. So that is why I put one in each corner and one near the bottom. And so what I've done is I've created a little frame around each fan, and they're about 50mm deep, and what they do is allow me to fit these little filters in. So these filters only cost me about 60p each. If you want to see how I got them so cheap and how to create that, just watch the video up above. And perfect little example of how to just make a spray booth at low cost. And yes, I've got 2 of them, and these are adjustable, so you can just have them as fast as you want. I've generally got them at the lowest setting. And a filter just goes directly in those frames. As you can see, one's just fallen out. Yeah, let's talk about the table itself. So I made this myself, and it's splayed legs just to give me a bit more stability. I've centered it in the space, and I've created a little hook right here for my gun. And I've got a little spray turntable here. So don't be fooled into buying anything expensive. So you don't need to buy a £200, £300, £400 table or an expensive turntable. These are from Amazon. If you want to see any links, just check my video description. I'll have links for everything that I show you in this video, but this was only a few quid. And if that's not enough area, if you're spraying something big, you just simply put something sacrificial on the top, for example, that, and you can just put trims on the top or whatever you like and spin it around, for example, a drawer, anything that you like, really. And yeah, so I've covered this up with handy wrap, and the reason I've covered it is so every year or so, every time I'm having a clean up, every time I'm getting rid of all the overspray and cleaning this up once and for all, then I literally just unpeel the handy wrap and it's brand new wood underneath. And it's really, really cheap, really, really easy to do. Just every time you clean, just re-wrap it back up. So I've created my booth 3.6 meters wide. As you can see, we've got about 1.5, maybe a little bit more over there. And the reason I put the stud wall in is to divide the two spaces to give me basically like a booth area so the fans work more efficiently. You know, we're not sucking air from over this area, we're sucking it from where the paint is falling, so that it's perfect to have that wall there to create that little space. And so yeah, we've got about 3.6 meters and it sticks out about, I don't know, 1.6 or so. And what that has done is given me this area here, and this is perfect for all my cleaning and just mixing paints up, storage. There's a sink there. Dumping stuff when I don't need it. So when I'm sorting stuff out, I just dump it there so it's not clogging up my workshop. Yeah, anything else about the booth? I've got a stick above or a piece of timber. So if I am hanging anything up, I can hang it from there. Not saying I really do. And I've got a little grid at the bottom. So imagine you're spraying, your spray is falling to the floor. You're walking it on, aren't you? You'd be walking it around everywhere, and you just be getting footprints everywhere. Whereas with this grid, I find that it falls through and, you know, I don't have that issue. You can't see any footprint marks anywhere. You can't see any paint from my feet anywhere. Fair enough, it's dirty. But yeah, this grid works really well. It's a driveway grid. You know, the grids that if you want grass to grow through and you're parking a car over the top, these are the ones you're looking for. And they work really, really well. Each one of these is 500 square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a square meter. 2, I've got 3 square meters here and it works absolutely fine. Other things to say is that the actual spray booth is covered in Corex, and so is all my floor. And Corex is the perfect material really if you're trying to do this on a budget. This obviously isn't a high-tech spray booth, obviously. It's a booth that does the job very well, and I haven't had to change anything. I haven't had any issues. And the Corex just allows me to spray, and then every year or two, I clean it up and peel that paint off when it gets thick enough. And if I just show you, it just comes off really, really easy, you know, especially when it's thick. So when it is thick, it just pulls off in a clump. I cleaned this up last year. I think it was just before the 2022 tour of the workshop. And so if you want to see me cleaning this up and how easy it is to clean, I'll leave a little link for the description at the top right now for you to see. So that is the booth area. Really, really efficient. I have no reason to change any of this, and my fans do a fantastic job. I'll run you by the switches in a moment. But yeah, it works fantastic. All right, let's walk around and talk about the racking. So the racking, I use twin slot shelving. So you've got the strips on the wall. These are screwed to my studs on the back. Obviously, this is a stud wall built workshop, spray booth, shall I say. And I've spaced them 600. So I've got studs every 600 on this wall. And it's perfect for a door of 2.4 because it supports it perfectly and keeps your work nice and flat so you don't get any dipping, especially with doors. If you're spraying doors and you're leaving them for a while, then you don't want to have one end overhanging because when you come to fit them, they're going to be warped and bowed. And as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 strips here. We don't necessarily use that one, but we have got slats at the bottom or brackets. We don't have that there just generally because we don't need to gain that space at the moment. If we were really busy, we would put those extra slots in to gain more stackable space. But we leave them off, so when we're pulling stuff out the racks, you know, offcuts on this side, we can just do so without taking those brackets off. And this holds quite a lot. I have created a little shelf at the top just to house all my strips and extra long oversized pieces that I want to keep inside and have got nowhere else to go. So that shelf is taken. And I have got all my clamps, which I need to sort out, and a few extra filters down there. I need to restock my filters, I'm running low. But other than that, this works fantastic. And I've spaced them out as close as I can. I didn't want them in between. I didn't want to take up that space because we need to allow for a component up to maybe 25 mil, 30 mil if necessary. And yeah, we've just used pipe protectors on the top as the padding. So when I spray, we spray 3 sides first, possibly, then we flip it over. We don't want to leave a mark on the sprayed face, the finished face, so these work perfectly for that. And I've been doing this for about 3 years, I've had no problems. So we've got 1 rack there, and we've got 2 mobile racks here. And these racks really are fantastic. They cost me hardly anything. They cost me 15 quid worth of materials each. Been meaning to make a video on this, and I will do soon. I'll show you where I bought all these poles for so cheap. It's a quick and easy way of doing it, but the frame is really, really just cheap, leftover timber with some caster wheels, and they do the job fantastically. You can wheel them any way you want. They're just in the corner here, just out of the way. We also have racks in this spray room, just mainly because I didn't want to clog up the workshop side. When we're stacking materials in there and we're using all that space, I didn't want to have a big old rack within this side. With your spray booth, you don't necessarily need that much space. When we're stacking materials in here, Sean brings them in, he leans them up against these poles, he leans them up against the wall. So taking that space wasn't the end of the world for me. Yeah, so we never used to store this much timber, but with prices at the moment, I've been stacking up and buying them while they're cheap. So for example, this birch I bought in the COVID times for £64 a sheet, and now they're about £130 a sheet. I've got about 30 sheets there. I've also bought lots of 18 mil, some 25, we've got some 9 and some 6 lying around, and it's fantastic. Most of the time we get materials ordered in if we've got a lot of work and we're just too busy to cut, we'll get them cut to size, but we've got a few jobs coming up where we've got some birch needed, so it's perfect for just getting you out of trouble. Having stock is great, isn't it? It's just, you can just pull it out the rack when you need it and just cut it up rather than waiting for someone to drop it off to you, and saves a bit of time at the end of the day. And on the right, we've got smaller offcuts, pieces that we don't want to throw away, half sheets, quarter sheets. In there, there are old benches from when we built the ultimate workbench. We broke it down and just kept the OSB. You just never know when you're going to need these kind of pieces. So if we talk about the booth itself, obviously we've got the fans and we've got the bench to spray on, and we've got the space there to spray. But what we do use to spray are these 2 sprayers. We use airless, and probably not a lot of people use airless in the furniture making business. They use high-end sort of like HVLP compressor sprayers. I haven't really got the know-how to spray with those types of sprayers. Plus you get a lot more overspray if you're using different types of PU and 2-part paints. They smell. I can't use smelly paints. I use household paints. I use eggshells, satins and silks, all water-based. And these machines are fantastic for that. I've got no reason to change. They do a fantastic job. If I give you an example of what the finish is like, it's really, really good. And I've got no reason to change. And this is an eggshell, 3 coats of eggshell on these. So this is what these sprayers do. These aren't the air-assisted airless sprayers, because you get AAA, air-assisted airless. These are just normal airless. With the air-assisted airless, it just pumps out a bit of air at the tip, creates a nicer fan pattern, I believe, and allows you to turn the pressure down, less overspray and a slightly better finish. But for me, I don't need to change. These are fantastic. So I've got 1 for whites and 1 for colours. You can see I've got 3 here now. This one I'm not allowed to show. This is, I can't tell you anything about this. It's been sent to me to test. But this has got my white in at the moment. I don't mix. So that's why I generally have 2 at any one go. But this one generally does my whites if I'm using these 2 only, and this one will do my colours. These 2 are probably overkill, and you're saying to me, why you've got such big machines? You don't need them. You can use a GX21, you can use a 390 or Graco. I only use Graco. But just imagine you buy yourself a little 1.1 litre car, or you get yourself a, I don't know, 3 litre BMW. When you're driving on the motorway 70 miles an hour, the BMW is just ticking along, low revs, and you know, you're not putting any strain on the engine whatsoever, whereas the 1.1 is really revving up high to get those high speeds. It's the same sort of scenario here. Bigger pump, so the pump's going dum dum on these two machines. If you get yourself a 390 or a GX21, the pump's dum dum. So you put more wear on your machine, and you know, those smaller machines aren't really meant to be used for constant use. These you could probably use 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no problem whatsoever. You could put really, really big tips in, spray fan widths of up to, I don't know, 15, 20 inches. So you go smaller, they spray smaller patterns, you know. But, you know, what I run at the moment is around 1800 PSI on most of these and have a 310 fine finish tip. So that's my setup. So let's move into this little section. And what we've got here is my little storage section. It's where I mix my paints. I've got 2 sinks under here. And in these 2 boxes, I used to have 2 390s, smaller versions of these. They used to fit in the box. They're soundproofed inside, but now they're just for storage. And yeah, so we've got twin slot shelving. We've got loads of leftover paints. Believe it or not, these are all leftover. You got, you know, thinners and white spirits. We got water in milk bottles to fill up our water when we're just cleaning the machines out. Got bits and pieces, spray tips, filters, paint brushes, sandpapers, gloves, handy wrap. Yeah, and over here we just keep our Star Bond glues and our brand new cutters we've not used. Just a little selection, and we've got a selection of, well, we've got a stock of white eggshells because we go through quite a lot of that. Down there we've got some silks that we use quite a lot of too. This was our sink, but we've covered it with a board just to give us more storage. All of this is just being sorted out at the moment. But we've got 2 sinks underneath, and they used to, when I was cleaning out my tips and my sprayers, they used to just drain into buckets. Then I used to get rid of the wastewater. But yeah, not used anymore. We clean outside, so it's just storage. I was going to say we use Osmo as well as our main varnishes, or our main oils, shall I say. And that is our space, and I quite like this little space. It's what everyone needs if you're going to be spraying, to make a little bit of mess and to store your paints, because you're going to have loads of paints left over. And we do store clamps and a few hanging rails and a few mirrors that we stock as well there. A few boxes up the top. Yeah, and that is that side. I was going to talk about the floor also. We did talk about Correx for the protection of all the spray booth. And as you can see, the floor is covered in it. So I love OSB, as you can tell. It's one of my favourite materials, and I wanted to protect the floor in the spray booth area, the spray room area, just mainly because one speck of paint, it's ruined, isn't it? It looks a mess, and I like to keep things nice and clean and tidy and look after things. So I thought, just cover it in white Correx. It's the more expensive Correx, the black stuff's cheaper. But, you know, this has been down for 2 or 3 years now, and I thought, well, every year I'm going to have to replace it, but I haven't. It's just lasted really, really well. And yeah, it could do with a little sweep at the moment, but it does protect the floor and obviously gives a little bit more brightness. So I'm quite happy with that. Looking at my sprayers, make sure that you do cover your sprayers up. This big cover covers all 3 sprayers, because you will get slight overspray in the air. And yeah, just make sure you cover your sprayers up, because they are expensive, and you look after them, they'll look after you. One other thing, as I'm looking over here, I do have a space heater, and this runs off kerosene. I have a store of kerosene where I fill that up. And this is perfect on cold days, like the cold snap we had a few weeks back in December 2022, where it was like in the minuses. It just takes the chill out the air. If you're spraying, then it's perfect. You turn it on and it just creates a nice warm environment as you're spraying, and they will still dry in 45 minutes, an hour, ready to recoat, do second coat, third coat, whatever. Yeah, so this is the spray room area. Before I move over, I wanted to show you one thing. Over here, we do have the dials. So left-hand fan, right-hand fan for the spray booth, and they're on dials, so they click on, off, on, off. They're generally plugged in. I unplug them when I'm not using them, but you can have them at variable speeds, and they go super high. These are really good fans for the price that they are. They're about £150 each. Had no problems with them. Anyone who is looking to create their own spray booth, this is a tried and tested method. Believe me, this works for me a treat. These two fans, they really do the job, especially with these handmade filters. It's not going to cost you a lot of money, and they do a fantastic job. So I think I'm finished in here now. Am I? Well, lighting, before I move in, you can see they're all spotlights. We've got about 25 or so highest luminum cool white spotlights in here. And we also have a speaker in the wall up here. So everything, as you can see, is out the way. We've got no lights hanging down. We've got no boxes in. We've got no filters. You know, we've got nothing in the ceiling. It's all clean and crisp, just to give us a nice working environment. And we've got the same on this side. So we've got the same amount of spotlights, probably all obviously flush with the ceiling. We've got another speaker there. We've got another speaker there. And we've got a speaker over there. So we've got 4 in total, and they're all controlled by that little stereo over there, which is nice. So we've got the music pumping during the day, good atmosphere in here. And all right, let's carry on with the ceiling. So the ceiling, we've got 4 spotlights in here. This was built maybe 8 years ago. It's had a respray since we had a fire. It was revamped and resprayed. And yeah, but when we built this, we thought, well, we need as much light as possible. So we've got 600 by 400 skylights, 4 of them dotted around, close to the corners. I just thought, well, they're going to be the dark spots. That's where the natural light needs to flood in. And as you can see, it's getting dark outside, and it's still absolutely perfect to work in. We can work in here till midnight on the darkest night out there, and it's fantastic. So, talking about the floor, because we have next door also, the floor is OSB. And if I was to give you one bit of advice, it'd be if you're looking for a floor that's durable and will stand the test of time, OSB is fantastic. Don't go with ply, because it could possibly delaminate and wear through. But this has had so much abuse. We put it down, gave it 3 coats of Morel's 2-part lacquer, and it lasted us 7 years up until the fire, where we re-renovated, we repainted the walls, we sanded back the floor once more, and then gave it another 2 coats. So this is, I don't know, 8 or so years old. Don't hold me on times, because I'm rubbish at dates. But it's fantastic, and this is why I love OSB. It's just such a cheap, really durable material to build things with, especially a workshop. The walls are all soundproofed in here, so I've got about 7 layers to the wall. If I go through them, we've got large cladding on the outside, then we've got a gap with battens, we've got our plastic, then we've got our stud wall. Between the stud wall, we've got 100mm of Celotex. Then over that, we've got acoustic, then on top of the studs on the inside, we've got birch ply, because I've got a whole load of acoustic birch ply from a job lot somewhere, 18mm. And then I went over with acoustic plasterboard, and then skim, then paint. So, and we've got 72mm thick doors also. So you can't hardly hear anything outside. It's really, really soundproofed. And the ceiling is just as thick also, with the same amount of insulation. No, 150mm insulation in the ceiling. As you can see, the ceiling is crisp. There's nothing hanging down. Even the fuse boxes are hidden. So we've got a little flap that flaps down on a loft catch, flaps down our fuse boxes in there. Nothing in the way, so no tube lights, nothing like that. And that fuse box services here, and the fuse box for this side is in the ceiling there. Again, all hidden, all out the way, all accessible. And yeah, it's nice and crisp in here. So, right, let me go over why it's so good to have the space if you're making wardrobes and furniture, or fitted furniture. So for me, wall space is essential. When you're bringing in all those components, with a wardrobe you might have 100, 150 components, sometimes more. Sometimes we have 2, 3, 4 jobs. 2 Christmases ago, just before Christmas, we had about 5 large jobs, and the whole workshop was covered. There must have been 150 sheets worth of materials stacked all the way around. We even had some in here and some dotted around the spray room to, you know, because we didn't have enough space in here. So when you're making wardrobes, you don't need fancy planers and thicknessers. You don't need spindle molders. You can get away with table saws. You can get away with router tables and a bandsaw, for me anyway. And obviously, if you wanted to, you could get yourself a planer thicknesser. That's a portable version, which is in there, and you can get a chop saw. I'll go over the bench soon and show you those little bits and pieces. But for me, it's all about the space for storage. That leads me to talk about the ultimate workbench and why we built it. So a few years back, I was watching some videos on YouTube and I saw some guy had built an ultimate workbench where everything was in, and it sort of inspired me and made me think, well, why aren't I doing that? I had a bench up against there, I had a bench here, I had portable benches everywhere, and I wasn't using the space efficiently. I also had a table saw here, and it was eating into loads of this space and just making the space really awkward. Created dead zones and places where you can't really store materials. So I thought, well, what if I just create an ultimate workbench that does everything? 2, 3, 4 people can work on it at any one time. It's got the table saw, it's got everything that you need to be able to work on and cut and machine without taking up a lot of space. And that's where the inspiration came from. So we took that saw apart, took the base off it, and designed the whole bench around that table saw. And as you can see, we've got the table saw housed in there. We've also got a chop saw and a portable thicknesser around there and extraction. So what that's done is it's freed up all this empty space here. Remember, this is all mess at the moment. I'm still sorting out. We just got all these offcuts. All of that is getting chucked. So that'll be clean and tidy by tomorrow. And all of this, I'm going to create one more rack for these offcuts. So that router table is going to live there, and that is basically all I need. So this is what the ultimate workbench does for you. It just gives you all that space and freedom in your workshop to be able to just gain space and just work efficiently. I suppose that's the correct way of saying it, to work efficiently. I went over before, I don't use fancy spindle molders and big heavy duty jointers, thicknessers. I simply use the bandsaw over there, a router table and a table saw. Along with that, we've got the chop saw, the plunge saw that we use on our ultimate workbench. And we've got a router table there, and yeah, not much else. So what I'll do now is I'll go over the actual bench and talk through the specs of it. So it's about 900 high, I believe. It's on these heavy duty cast wheels, and they're fantastic. They're about 15 quid each, but they take, apparently 4 of them take a ton or something like that. But it's all made out of birch, it's a mixture of oil on the front and lacquer on the top. And we've got the table saw here. So this table saw is a 12-inch table saw. Or is it 10? It's a 250mm blade. I can't think when I'm making a video. But we've got the carriage rail on the side here. So that's the carriage, the sliding carriage, and that will run on the side. So that works perfectly. And we also incorporated this piece here. So this sliding fence will slide. It needs a little bit of tweaking at the moment because a bit broke off the front, but that slides in this groove. So we designed this little groove on the front for this fence to run off, and it works perfectly. There's no need to change it. I like it. I like the fact that someone can work on the bench while somebody's cutting, for example. Let's move over. So we've got a drawer here and we've got a drawer here. So that's just for storage. This one had a box on with a hole, and then it had a cyclone on the top. And as you can see here, we've made valves out of all of these plumbing valves. And we've got 4 there. One valve goes to the table saw. One valve goes to these outlets. And one valve goes there. So you've got one for each of these hoses, these CLS 3-meter hoses. So one hose will service this side, one hose will service this side. So that's 3 valves taken care of. And then we've got this chop saw here that pops up. This is on a hydraulic lift. You pump it and this will come up. And then this flap flips up and the chop saw is right there. And so yeah, one extraction port goes to here. So that's where all the valves go to. And you can turn them all on and off, whichever ones you want, have them all on at the same time, or just have one on, for example. And it needs a bit of tweaking because we weren't getting great extraction. So we've changed it so it goes directly to the Hoover at the moment. We're not using the cyclone or the box, but it's something that over this year I'm going to tweak and improve that slightly to make it work a little bit better. So yeah, so we've got the table saw, we've got the cyclone and the valves, and over here we've got a portable Makita thicknesser on a pull-out shelf. And we haven't got extraction for that, we just let it fall on the floor and just sweep it up. This space here, it pulls out again, we've got our pins and our pin gun. It's a shelf that pulls out, and that is for our silent Hyundai compressor. And then over here, you've just seen we've got the chop saw that flips up. It comes completely level with the bench, the actual chop saw base. And then we've got little fences that clip into these dog holes with stoppers. So when it's up, we can chop timber up. The fences drop directly into the holes. So it's completely aligned both sides. So we've got two fences that click in, and that works really, really well. And on this end, we've got lots of drawers. So we've gone from, I don't know, 150 to 125 to, I don't know, 100, something like that. But we've gone up in increments to give us decent storage in each. So we've got, you know, if we get a bigger box, we can put it here, and the smaller pieces can go up here, for example. And they're all 800 deep, these drawers, because this bench is 1.6, or it might be very slightly under 800, probably about 750. All push to open, all these drawers. So that's great. They still need storing. We still got lots of tools that will go in there, and we need to sort some tools out, basically. While I'm here in this corner, we've got this channel system. It's like a vice system. So you put your little clamps in here. I'll show you in a moment. They slide in. You put a peg in these dog holes, and then you can rest the whole side on the pegs. So you've got a set of pegs here. You've got a set of pegs on that leg, and continue down the bench. The clamp goes in, slides however far you want it, and then you clamp that piece on. So it's been supported by the pegs, and then it's getting clamped to the bench. And if there was one bit of advice to say, if you are building your own bench, I'd say go for this system. It's great, along with the dog holes on the top. We've spaced these dog holes out quite far because I just didn't want to overkill and just do stupid amount, and we've spaced them out nicely to make sure they're center of the bench and they look nice. At the end needs to be finished. We've got to get some doors on here. I was thinking of putting some little micro shelves in this space, and then just putting some doors. You can see the way the bench is made. So it's made up of these little frames. We've got videos of how we made this. Check out my Ultimate Workbench videos. And then it's just one big carcass that sails through, like a tunnel carcass, I called it, with one division. And then they all get joined, and that's what gave the bench rigidity. It's really, really stiff. And that creates a little space here for our clamps to go in, etc. Let's move on. It's the same amount of drawers here. Remember, this is all made out of birch. The fronts were all covered in clear Osmo, and the top was a hard lacquer. Can't remember the one. If I can, I'll put it in a subtitle right now. But it's a really, really tough lacquer. And we've got two big drawers. Everyone needs a big drawer to get rid of big junk or big items. Fillers, iron-on edging. What have we got in here? I don't know, pocket hole jigs. And these ones, we've got sandpapers, biscuits, clamps. These are the clamps. And these are the ones that slide in. Yeah. These ones are ratchet. These are the Bessie Cloppies. These are from BANGGOOD. Fantastic, these are. Clamps, what else in here? Screws, hand tools, sandpapers, charger, and the Veratex iron-on edger. I like that machine, it's really good. So we talked about those drawers. Moving on, we've got the Hoover. So that Hoover connects to those valves next to the table saw. We're going to upgrade that to a proper heavy-duty version soon, something that's really meant for the job and take a lot more waste, because the bag fills up quite quickly, and I think that's where our problem stems from, this suction. And that is it, really. Regards to this Jessam router table thing, what do you call it, a router base, whatever. We haven't finished it off. We need to create a little box around here, and then we can create a little pipe, go to one of these valves, or extend the valves and make another valve, so we have 5 rather than 4. As you can see, all our power goes to the back, and all our valves all the hoses from the valves go under the bench and go to where they need to. But another thing I do like about this bench is the fact that you can just plug one of these hoses, see that end of the CLS hose that are pushed directly in, like that. And then these quick release ends go to the power tool. And it's fantastic because underneath the bench also, we've got power, these extension cables. We've got one on either side. So obviously that connects to the Hoover, which in turn, so when you're using a sander, for example, and that's connected to the sander, when you turn the sander on, it will turn the extraction on, making sure you've got the right valve turned on, and then it will suck out the dust. So it's all incorporated. And this is why I was saying about being efficient and having the right processes and having the right equipment and the right layout if you are making this sort of stuff, because this is where the ultimate workbench comes in so handy. It's really fantastic. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't revert back to what I had. I really wouldn't. And by having this space, yeah, it does take up a lot. It's the size of a full-size snooker table, just under by a few inches. I wouldn't change it for the world because it does everything and without hampering you. Like I said, 4 people could work on this pretty easy. One person could be over there cutting with the plunge saw, for example. The other person is using a table saw. Or someone could be using the router table while somebody's doing some sanding or some iron-on edging over here, etc., etc. So that is our process. And what usually happens is that our process is we make things as components. They get dusted, they get brought into the spray room, stacked up against here, up against this leg or up against the wall there or up against the column if they're tall 2.4 pieces. Already dusted down. They get sprayed. Once they're sprayed, they'll dry in here for a couple of hours or even overnight. Then they'll come back in. They get sanded down with P240. The edges get sanded, all the arises get sanded. Then it will come back in for its final 2 coats. And they get 3 coats each, everything. And that is our process. So going from bringing the materials in pre-cut most of the time, if we aren't busy and we can afford a bit more extra time, we can use some of our stock. We'll cut the materials up, we'll make the pieces up, bring them in, spray them, bring them back, sand them down, go back in here for our final coats, and then they are ready to fit, to be honest. So when they've had their last 2 coats in here, then basically they get left here until we're ready to fit. So then they just get picked up off of the rack and then brought directly into the van. I probably talked before about the way I don't assemble anything first. And when I see people pre-making their wardrobes and making it all up and everything in the workshop first, I used to do that. And fair enough, if you've got something really complicated and you need to line up cornices and stuff, but I don't see how you're going to get a wardrobe built completely level in here and then transfer that into on-site and get that exactly how you had it built in the workshop without having to reline doors again, for example, or adjust the trim, etc., etc. So I don't do any of that. It comes in here, once it's had its 3 coats, and it's finished, the customer's ready for it to be fitted, it'll go straight into the van, stacked in the van into the customer's house and assembled for the first time. And that is it. So I don't know if there's anything else to talk about, really. I really like this layout and I wouldn't change anything from my construction process to my ultimate workbench, to the lighting, to the space, to the way I spray. Everything works. I don't need to change anything. It works, you know, as I'm working, I don't go, oh, that's in the way, I need to change that. I don't. It just works fluently and without any problems, and I'm really, really happy with the way I work. So I hope that's helped and been of some use. If it has, feel free to like and subscribe. Please, please, please subscribe. It means the world to me. Trying to grow the channel a little bit. Remember, everything that you see is all down to me. I don't have anyone who edits my videos. I make the content myself. I film myself. I edit myself. I'm in here doing woodworking. I measure up, do admin. I look after my children as well. 2 kids, take them to school in the morning. I do everything. So what I'm trying to say is these videos do take a little bit of effort and a lot goes into them, you know, a lot of my time, but I don't want to stop. I do love creating and I love sharing what I do. So if you do subscribe, that means the world. Help me grow the channel. That'd be absolutely fantastic. So other than that, I'm going to love you and leave you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great 2023. Lots of luck for the future. Take care. Ciao for now.